I'm Pulkit and I work as a UI engineer at Flipkart. And today I'll be talking about battle for privacy. So this battle is actually between the browser and the trackers, and how over the years, browsers have tried to restrict unauthorized trackers from tracking you and also keep a check on the authorized trackers as to what data they share. Now, in order to provide you a very good user experience, browsers have been sharing our data with advertisers, A/B testing frameworks, just to ensure that we have a very personalized experience. But over the years, browsers have worked out one or more ways to keep these trackers on our keep these advertisers, A/B testing frameworks, all of them on a very tight leash. And when I talk about browsers, uh, specifically Safari ITP and Firefox, they have been at the forefront when it comes to addressing the issue of privacy. So throughout the course of the presentation, I'll be talking about Safari ITP, Chrome same-site cookie policy, and Firefox enhanced tracking prevention system. But before jumping to Safari ITP and Chrome same-site cookie policy straight away, let's first understand what techniques these trackers use to actually track you. So the first and the foremost is third-party cookies. So it gives trackers an option to track users across multiple domains. So consider a scenario where you're on a domain, and let's assume that the domain has some A/B testing library. Okay. Now you make some interactions on the particular domain and you click somewhere and you scroll. Now what happens is that A/B testing library, let's say it sends a post call, and in the response of the post call, it forms or it sets some cookie on its domain. Okay, the domain of the A/B testing library is different here. On its so it forms a cookie on its domain. Now let's say you go on a different domain, and by chance that domain also has the same A/B testing library. So now what is going to happen is when that A/B testing library makes any get request, makes any post request, all those cookies that it formed earlier would be sent along with that request. So you see, right, how you were on a different domain, but the same A/B testing library is able to track you across two completely different domains. Okay, so this is one way of tracking, and we'll talk about third-party cookies more in detail. Another very prominent way of tracking is tracking pixel. So a tracking pixel is actually nothing but a transparent one by one pixel image tag, uh, which is used for tracking. So let's consider this example. Let's say where you're on a product page of an e-commerce website and you're scrolling and you're spending some time. So what the e-commerce website owner can do is he can actually drop a social media tracking pixel there. So what the tracking pixel will do is when the browser makes a request to load that image, it will make a request. So what the social media tracker can do, they can form cookies, okay, and they can send your information in query params. Next thing you know, or let's say that you're on the product page, you spend some time but you don't end up buying it, but by that time tracking pixel call has been already made. It is an image tag. So now what happens is when you actually go to that social media website, you see the advertisement of that same product that you were looking at few minutes ago, and I'm sure this has happened to all of us at some point of time. So this is also one way of tracking pixel. Last but not the least is user agent. So your user agent can actually give a lot of information about you, such as your browser or what OS you are using, and the website owners can target you accordingly, according to your browser or your current OS version or whatever whatever info the user agent provides. Just like I mentioned earlier, Safari and Firefox have been at the forefront when it comes to addressing the issue of privacy. So let's talk about Safari ITP. So ITP actually stands for Intelligent Tracking Prevention System. So it actually internally it has a machine learning classifier. Now that machine learning classifier is able to classify or label domains as cross-site trackers. So when this machine learning classifier or when intelligent tracking prevention system labels some domain as a cross-site tracker, which means it can track you across multiple domains. So it will label it as a cross-site tracker, and all the restrictions that come along with ITP, it will apply to all those trackers also. So now I won't be talking about every ITP version, but I'll be talking about the major ITP versions and the restrictions that came along. So Safari ITP 1.0 and 1.1. So I'll first read out the restrictions that came along. It says that third-party cookies may be used for 24 hours. Then it says they will be purged after 30 days. And the last thing is introduction of the storage access API. So first, before going ahead, let's understand how third-party cookies actually work. Now consider this scenario. Okay, you have this web page and you have this web page. Here the top level domain is a.com and there is an iframe here, okay, or an embed here which has a domain b.com. So Now what, so this iframe, right, b.com, so whatever cookie this b.com sets or tries to access are set to be in third party context. Okay, and also for the browser, when we're talking about the browser, right, third party cookie is actually nothing. So for the browser it is always the third party context, because if you see, right, the top level domain is a.com here, and the iframe or the embed is b.com. So whenever b.com actually tries to set or access some cookies, it is set to be accessed or set in third party context, simply because it does not match the top level domain. Top level domain here is different. Whereas consider the second scenario, consider the second web page. Now b.com. Now b.com is the top level domain here. So whatever cookie is sets or it tries to access, okay, those cookies would be in first party context, because this is the top level domain. So this is what third party context means. Let's come back to the rules of ITP 1.0 or the restrictions. It says third party cookies may be used for 24 hours. So let's see what it means. Now consider this case. So again, the top level domain is a.com. So there is a social media, let's say, embed here, whose domain is example.com. So now let's say that you click on this button. Okay, let's say you click on this button, and this iframe or this embed tries to form a cookie. Now, just like I already mentioned, example.com does not match with the top level domain. So this is third party context. So it tries to form a cookie in third party context. So what the ITP rule here says is that, okay, so you formed a third party cookie, or rather a cookie in third party context. But if you do not visit example.com in the first party context, which means example.com should be the top level domain. If you do not visit example.com as the top level domain in 24 hours after forming this cookie in this embed, then the cookies are going to be partitioned. So what it means is, let's say you formed a example.com, you clicked here, you clicked on this button, and this embed tries to form a cookie. Okay, but now you do not visit example.com as a top level domain for 3 days. So now what is going to happen, and which is the very important point here, the cookies are going to be partitioned. So before going ahead, let's now understand what does partitioning mean. Now consider this example. Again, the top level domain is a.com here. The iframe or embed has b.com. And on the other hand, it is the top level domain is c.com and the iframe is same. So now what will happen is, let's say b.com actually forms some cookie here. Forms a cookie here means it forms a cookie here when it is being used as an iframe, but the top level domain is a.com. Now partitioning means that the cookies that the embed forms here are directly tied to the top level domain here, a.com. So let's say it forms some cookies here. Okay, now you come to a different web page where the top level domain is b.com, but the embed is same, it is b.com. So whatever cookie it actually set here, okay, those cannot be accessed here, simply because these cookies are partitioned. Okay, this is what partitioning means. They are tied to the top level domain also. So this is what partitioning means. If we come to our previous example, so it says that if you do not visit example.com as a top level domain for 24 hours after forming the cookie here, then all those cookies would be partitioned. Okay. Now, if I come to the rules again, it says they will be purged after 30 days. So now let's assume that you clicked here and you did not visit example.com for 3 days. But if you do not visit, but what Safari ITP says is, if you do not visit example.com for 30 days, then what is going to happen is it is going to purge. It is going to purge all the example.com cookies. They cannot even be used for first party use. Only and only when you interact with example.com as a first like the top level domain, then only will it start forming cookies. Otherwise, all cookies will be purged and will be, it will continue to purge those cookies. But now there is actually a slight problem here, because if you see, right, this embed, okay, just like we assume, like example.com forms a cookie when you click here. But if you do not visit it in 24 hours, then it partitions the cookie, which means it is tied to a.com. Now let's also assume you end up opening example.com as the top level domain, and it forms some cookies there. But since the cookies that you formed in this iframe are tied to this, okay, this is a different partition. And when you open example.com as a top level domain, that is a different partition. So this actually, created a problem for single sign-ons and everything. So Safari ITP 1.1 introduced storage access API. So through the storage access API, what these trackers, or let's say what these social media embeds could do is, they could access at least their unpartitioned cookies. Unpartitioned cookies as in example.com is opened as a top level domain. Okay, and then you can access it using the storage access API. And we'll talk about storage access API more detail in the coming slides. Now let's come to Safari 2.0. So we just learned that Safari 1.0 and 1.1, they had the 24-hour grace period, which means that if you interact with the embed, or if you interact with the cross-site tracker as a first party, as a top level domain, then you can then partitioning would take place. But Safari 2.0, it, it completely removed the 24-hour grace period. So and it also says immediate cookie partitioning. So what does that mean? So now let's say this is another web page where the top level domain is news.example. Okay, and now there is a video embed which has the domain is as video.example. So now what is going to happen is, since the 24-hour grace period is removed, completely discarded, so cookies will be partitioned immediately. Cookies would be partitioned immediately, and the embeds would have to use storage access API to access those cookies. So now what will happen is, let's say this video embed, you click on this button and it tries to access its cookies, partition cookies, non-partition cookies. So what would happen is, so Safari will actually give you this pop-up saying that, do you want to allow video.example to use cookies and website data while browsing news.example? So if you click on allow here, right, then Safari ITP would know that, okay, you've given it consent. Now this example, this video.example would be able to access its non-partition cookies. Okay. And obviously the cookies that this embed forms here are tied to the news.example, but I'm talking about the non-partition cookies here. Obviously the cookies formed here are tied to news.example. So using the storage access API, the video embed would be able to access its first party cookies. Okay. But now what actually is the difference? Because just like we saw, this storage access API, which gives you this pop-up, was actually also introduced in 1.1. So the change here is, with 2.0, what happened was this pop-up will come up. Okay. In 1.1, it would silently ignore. So what it means is, let's say if the embed uses the storage access API in 1.1, then it would silently ignore this pop-up. Okay, if it follows certain rules. But with 2.0, you will explicitly have to click on allow here. Otherwise, this embed would not be able to use its non-partition cookies. Okay, so these were the restrictions that came along with the ITP 2.0. Now let's come to Safari ITP 2.1. So it says partition cookies are no longer supported, and third parties classified with cross-site tracking capabilities to use storage access API. And a very important point is client-side cookies to have a mandatory 7-day expiry or a 7-day cap. So I'll start with the second point first. So there are actually two ways of forming a cookie. One is either you send those cookies in the HTTP or HTTPS response, or your request response. Then the other way is document.cookie, which is the JavaScript way of forming the cookies, or it is also called as the client-side cookies. So all those cookies which are formed through document.cookie, Safari 2.1 says that all those cookies will have a mandatory 7-day expiry. So even if you set the expiry as 10 years, it does not matter, because it will automatically be kept to, capped to 7 days. And the reason for it is, so a lot of advertisers or trackers actually form first party cookies. So let's say an advertiser is being loaded on a domain, so it will actually form cookie on that particular top level domain. Okay, and later when you refresh and you visit it later, it will use the first party cookies. So to restrict that, Safari 2.1, it brought in a 7-day expiry, and partitioning is no longer supported. Now there are no partition cookies. So for every cookie, whether it is a third party cookie that was formed in the partition, which was formed rather when you're using a domain as an embed, or is it a first party cookie when you're opening the particular domain on the top level, every cookie will have to be accessed using the storage access API. So the partition cookie concept that they introduced, it was like completely discarded. Now Firefox Enhanced Tracking Prevention System. So unlike ITP, Firefox Enhanced Tracking Prevention System, it actually uses a list called disconnect lists. Okay, so if your domain is present in the disconnect list, then you will be considered as a tracker. And disconnect list, right? This also works on the same ideology, that if your domain has cross-site tracking capabilities, then you will be labeled as a tracker, and all the restrictions that come along with enhanced tracking prevention system, they'll apply to that. And also Safari says, that also a lot of times you might see this pop over when you open some websites on Firefox, which will say if the site, and it will also say that if the site seems broken, try turning off enhanced tracking prevention system, because by default it will block all the social media trackers, all the third-party cookies. So you might see this pop up a lot of times on Firefox. Now let's come to Chrome's same-site cookie policy. So just like I mentioned, right, Safari and Firefox, they have been very proactive, but following their footsteps, back in 2020 or in 2021, Chrome decided to roll out claim side cookie policy. So what it says is, from Chrome 80 onwards, site owners need to explicitly label third-party cookies with same site none and secure in order to use them on other sites. If the attribute is absent, then the cookies will automatically be labeled as same site lex. So let's first understand what these attributes actually mean. Same site strict. Okay, so this is now the most stringent attribute. So this simply says that your cookies cannot be accessed in third-party context. It also says that cookies will only be available in first-party context, which means whether if you're trying to use your cookies or set or get your cookies in the iframe, right? If you're trying to access them in the iframe in third-party context, they won't be accessible. It simply says that. Next, let's come to same site is equal to lex. So it says that third-party cookies will be sent only during top-level navigation. So before I mentioned, right, if you try to set or access cookies in an embed or in an iframe, and if the top-level domain is different from the iframe domain, then those cookies are said to be accessed or set in third-party context. But there is actually another way to set or access cookies in third-party context, which is, let's say you're on a domain, and that domain again loads let's say an A/B testing library with a different domain. That library has a different domain, so it sends a post call. Okay, so for that domain, okay, when it sends the post call, then all the cookies associated with that A/B testing library's domain would also go. Now these cookies, since the domain of the A/B testing library and the top level domain do not match, these cookies that go along with the request are also in third party context because they don't match with the top level domain. So this is another example of third party context, or accessing cookies in third party context rather. Now, it says that third-party cookies will be sent only during top-level navigation. So what it means is, let's say you have this domain a.com, okay, this top-level domain. There is an anchor tag here. So when you click on it, it sends a GET request to example.com. Now, since this is top-level navigation, so what will happen is all the cookies of this domain, example.com, would go along with that request. Okay, because the same side attribute is lex here. If the same side attribute was strict here, considering that the same side attribute was strict, and then the cookies won't be sent. And since the attribute set here is same side lex, and this is top level navigation, so cookies for example.com would be sent along with that request. And this is third party context. And the highlight here is Chrome says that if you do not set this attribute on your cookies, same side, then by default Chrome is going to assume that okay, the same side is equal to lex. Now let's come to same side none and secure. So cookies are accessible in third-party context over a secure connection here, and it means that if you want to access your cookies in third-party context, not top-level navigation or anything, just generally in third-party context, then Chrome same-side cookie policy says that you need to provide these two attributes: same side is equal to none and secure. So why Chrome says secure? Because this attribute actually ensures that you are accessing cookie over HTTPS. Okay, so if you actually form a cookie with same side none and secure on a domain, let's say with HTTPS, and then on the same version of the domain, same HTTP version of that domain, if you try to access that cookie would not be accessible, okay, because the attribute set here is secure. And this is like the most relaxed attribute, okay, because if you set your cookies with same side none and secure, then you would be able to access your cookies in any third party context, be it in embeds, or while sending a request, while sending a post request or get request, anything. Yeah. So we talked about Chrome's same-side cookie policy, ITP. So the thing to notice here is that all of these things are, they are moving away from third-party cookies, or using storage, in fact, as a broader term, using storage to track users. So they're actually moving away from that. So Chrome actually introduced something called as FLETCH, and this is still a proposal. Okay, this is a privacy sandbox proposal to serve remarketing and custom audience use case. So privacy sandbox, these proposals are generally, targeted to, stop the use of storage, or let's say the cookies or first party cookies for targeting. Okay, so going forward, tracking is going to look like this. Okay, FLETCH, or there is something called as FLOC also, which is still a theoretical concept, but Google Chrome is working on it. So I'll quickly give you an overview of what FLETCH is going to do. So what FLETCH is going to do is, let's say, so it has like 4 steps. So let's say you visit an e-commerce website with a product page, okay, and that product page has some bike, okay. So but you spend time on the paid, but you do not end up buying it. So now the website owner actually has a purpose. So the website owner can actually see that you have a purpose here. Since you spend so much time on the product page, he can actually use you for remarketing. So what FLETCH says is, so you need to add that user to an interest group. So let's say the website owner will create an interest group called bikes, and he'll add you there. Now comes the next step, running an ad auction. So let's say you visited the product website, you did not buy anything, and the website owner added you to an interest group. Now what will happen is, now let's say you go on a website that publishes ad, okay, and assuming that that website publishes ad, and behind the scenes it uses FLETCH API. So what it is going to do is, it is going to run an auction. That auction is going to run to choose the best ad for you. Now it is going to run that auction, it is going to take out all the interest groups and run an auction on all the interest groups. Now what is going to happen is, it is going to send the data to the seller and the buyer. Now what does seller and buyer mean when we are talking about FLETCH? So in the world of FLETCH, seller means the publisher. Publisher as in the website you visit, which is actually showing you an advertisement. Buyer is actually the e-commerce website here in our example. So it will send real-time data to both the publisher and the buyer. Why? Because they might be running some demand side service, buyer might be running some demand side service here, which might check for your creatives, or it might check for whether there is enough budget in your campaign to run that advertisement or not. So it sends real time data. Now when all of the ad is for you, then it displays the winning ad. Although this concept is a proposal, but this shows us that these browsers are actually moving away, or especially Chrome is moving away from targeting a specific user. Rather, they are saying that, okay, we'll put you in a bucket, and we'll target a cohort. We'll target an audience that shares similar interests. So yeah, so this is what the future of tracking might look like in the coming days, with FLETCH coming in, and also Flock, which is which is still theoretical. So this is what the future might look like, future of tracking. So thank you. That was my time, and would be happy to connect.